Good morning and welcome, everybody. We're going to get started here in just a second. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Anthony, for heading up this webinar today. Dawn, you can take us away whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, thank you, George. My name is Don Snizaski. I work with Life and Safety, and I am here also to introduce Anthony Wilkes. Quick story about Anthony and I. We worked together, I don't know, 30 years ago at OSHA, and so it's been a long ride and a good ride. And so, Anthony, please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Anthony Wilkes, and like Don said, we worked together at South Carolina OSHA. I ended up retiring from South Carolina OSHA in 2023. So after about 30 years of doing safety and health, I've seen some effective hearing conservation programs, and I've seen some not so effective ones. But thank you for having me on this webinar, Don.
Thank you. Well, let's get started. So, the objective here is to make sure that the employees, don't have the ill effects of hearing loss, which definitely creates a medical problem. So the my hold on one second. There we go. Sorry. Learning objectives. So the learning objectives we're going to talk about today is understanding OSHA's 1910.95. It's the OSHA standard that governs the do's and don'ts around your hearing conservation programs. It's to identify and mitigate noise hazards and build or enhance a hearing conservation program which will protect your employees. And tools and strategies, sounding booths and things that are available to basically or other ways to shield noise and strategies to help prevent exposure to noise to employees. Anthony, do you got anything else on that you would like to add before we get going?
No, Don, just some of the things about we're going to get in some of the details about the hearing conservation program. And we'll talk some of the things that may be able to help you with your hearing conservation programs or mitigate some of the noise hazards in the workplace.
All right. Why is why does hearing conservation matter? Because there are lots of people that are exposed to heavy noise levels or periodic noise levels in the environment. And what I've seen here, you can see that there's a number of employees, 22 million workers exposed to, noise levels and OSHA violations. But noise is also a severe stressor on the body. I mean, there is folks that go out and do monitoring because it creates conditions like high blood pressure and stress and when you're exposed to high levels of noise, your body reacts in ways that really you may not even be aware of. Um, I actually remember when my father, who worked in a steel mill in Pennsylvania for 40 years, would come home from work and you could actually watch him de-stress because it would take him a few hours of getting out of a heavy noise environment for him to calm back down. I mean, so there are definitely health hazards that go with hearing conservations. But as you can see, many people are exposed to noise and it is preventable. The regulations, this is where really, Anthony can dive in, but, like I said, the standard is 1910.95. If you have insomnia, it's the greatest thing to read. But if your job is to protect employees and you're in the health and safety field, you need to know what the standard says. Anthony, do you want to go from here?
Yeah, I can jump in right here, Don. In particular, hey, so there's been a number of studies out there done that speaks on noise loss. There's some things that says noise loss can happen at 80 as low as 80 decibels. But however, OSHA has established the action level to be 85 decibels for an 8-hour time weighted average. So the action level for OSHA means that there needs to be some action. And I believe we're going to talk about a little bit more as to what needs to be done at that. At that 85 decibels, if you get anybody exposed to 85 decibels over that 8 hour time weighted average, here now you have to put them in that hearing conservation program. Now, OSHA has established the permissible exposure limit at 90 decibels for an 8 hour time weighted average. Now, once you get into that 90 decibel range, now OSHA asks that you do some type of engineering controls or administrative controls to reduce the employee's exposure below 90 decibels. And that's where uh, things things get more in detail as to how you're going to reduce those noise levels. Now, OSHA has some documentation out there or directives out there. Hey, they would like for it to be below 90 decibels, but OSHA also realized to get that low, that there may be it may not be feasible. And when we talk about feasibility, can it actually be done? And then the economic feasibility a part of that also. So one of the things OSHA really looks for you to do is reduce that. And if you reduce it, hopefully you can reduce it by at least 3 decibels. So, and 3 decibel reduction makes a big difference. Now,
Anthony,
once you
thank
have
you.
to,
Oh, sorry,
Mhm.
go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, once you get into that hearing conservation program, there are monitoring requirements that you must do. Uh, Monitoring, you got to do some initial monitoring. You have to do monitoring when there's a change in the process, a change in the equipment. You have to do testing. When we talk about that, audiometric testing, that's that training and a record keeping requirement. Go ahead, Dan.
Well, how's the monitoring? Give them a real quick snippet because maybe not everybody understands what monitoring is and how it occurs, and that you don't you sample the employee's exposure, not so much the
The
exposure of
air.
the department.
But Don, if you go to the next slide,
Yep.
I think the
Oh,
next
there we
slide
go.
talks
There we go.
about
Yes, this
the
is what I'm looking
baseline
for.
audiogram.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. So,
Yeah,
yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about how, because, noise could be periodic, it could be consistent, it could be intermittent. There's all kind of different levels and why
yeah.
sampling of an employee exposure is so important.
Yeah, so like you said, there's the noise can be hey, it can be a continuously noise, or it could be a periodic, or hey, you just might have some type of impact noise. So you use equipment such as these dosimeters or sound level meters to monitor the employee exposure to that noise level. Of course, you can do area monitoring or just a snippet sampling, but the OSHA standard requires they're looking for actual employee exposure, and that data is based on an 8 hour time weighted average. Now you may be able to sample for 4 hours or something and show what that level may be uh, if you get employees over that action level or permissible exposure limit. And then one of the things that we always try to do is identify those high exposure tasks or zones. That's where you can do some of that monitoring, the area monitoring. That's where that comes in at. And even equipment, you could get close to equipment and see exactly which types of equipment is putting out the highest noise levels. And then also that baseline getting monitoring gives you information as to, hey, maybe once we make some adjustments or changes, then we can go back and reassess those areas.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you definitely want to get a representative sample of employees
Right.
and job tasks change. So sometimes an employee could be working in a low noise area and then at the end of the day, or they have to go clean up X, or this job task now changes and they do this once a week, but it's a high exposure. So getting a good representative sample, as Anthony said, is what you want to do.
Mhm.
So the written program, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, you're required to have a written program. OSHA will ask for the written program. You have to be able to present it, and the major elements need to be there. What is the statement? What are you trying to achieve? Who's responsible to make sure people wear their hearing protection or that they show up annually to receive their or get their baseline hearing tests and then annually get their baseline hearing tests. So this policy basically governs how the written hearing conservation program is implemented. Um, Anthony, anything else before I jump to the next slide?
Uh, no, I just want to add as far as those roles and responsibilities, you want to be able to identify who's going to be, I guess, the administrator of this program, and then also how are you going to handle, hey, how are we going to get to how are we going to do audiometric testing, how often that's going to be done, and you want to kind of address that in that program.
There is a lot too. I mean, you think about it, you have people showing up to get all these hearing tests done. I mean, it's not like a one and done program. This is something that basically you need to, stay on top of because you slip on getting an annual hearing
Mhm.
test done or so those roles and responsibilities are critical and that way people know what needs to get done at certain tasks. Record keeping. This is Anthony. This is one I don't that I think you probably have a better insight than I do.
Oh,
You
record keeping?
Yeah, like how
Yes.
long records are required to be maintained and how you're required to tell employees of their exposure levels, those kind of things.
Yeah, so record keeping is OSHA makes record keeping a requirement of most of their standards. The record keeping, in particular for the noise monitoring, it needs to be you need to inform the employees of their exposure levels. So you got to inform them of it, and then you got to keep records of this. Now, most records need to be kept uh, the the length of the employee's employment plus 30 years if it's a medical exposure record. And then once we're talking about medical exposure records, we're talking about any of these uh, audiograms that that they end up getting. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about audiograms next. But yeah, audiometric testing are those things. So you got to keep that for the length of their employment plus 30 years.
It's a long time.
Hmm.
Here you go. Yeah, the audiometric testing protocols.
Hmm.
Really, it's when what we like to see, if it's possible, that when someone goes to work, you basically, could get a good baseline before they start, but you have 6 months to do that. Audiometric testing used to be the big box that people would drag around, and you had to go in this, the van would pull up, and you'd go outside and get it done, and they have there are ways now that have made it a lot easier. Basically, with the computer and a little device, you can do hearing testing in a quiet room now, so it's not so um, arduous to get this done. And then the annual testing, which is kind of rounding up the people that are in the hearing conservation program that have overexposure or exposures and making sure that you get those folks together to get them tested. Anthony, anything before that you want to talk about the standard threshold shifts because that's really where record keeping starts to get into play.
Yeah, so a standard threshold shift is defined as a change in the hearing threshold of an average of 10 decibels or more at specific frequencies. And those frequencies are the 20, 2000, 3000, and 4000 hertz compared to a baseline audiogram in either ear and when that indicates there's a potential work-related hearing loss. And if it's a work-related hearing loss, then you have to record that injury. If it's a standard threshold shift, you have to record that injury on your OSHA 300 logs, your injury illness records. Mhm.
Now, Anthony, do you also need to inform the employee that they have an overexposure? What is your obligation to let them know that medically this is happening?
Yes. So what it does is just like any injury or illness, you must inform the employees of that they may be experiencing some potential work-related hearing loss. Now, the employee may not miss any lost time or any of those, but that is one of those significant illnesses that has to be reported on your logs.
Question
Mhm.
here is that something that you're required to do in writing, or you should do in writing, or you can just tell the employee that they've been overexposed or they may be experiencing hearing damage? Should you write that? Should it be documented?
It definitely should be documented, regardless, just to show that it has been done for that employee, because you don't want an employee to come back later on and say, "Oh, you didn't tell me I experienced this, and now all of a sudden I can't hear." So,
Gotcha.
mhm.
Thank you. All right. Training. So as we can see, oh, sorry about that. Training is annually. It doesn't have to be super in depth, but you need to discuss certain things like, noise is hazardous and how it basically can affect your hearing and how it damages your hearing and what the health effects associated with it. Also, how to clean your earplugs or throw away your earplugs if they're disposable. Depending on your noise level and how much different hearing protection you need, because folks that work in extremely high level noise, they have earplugs and earmuffs. And they actually also have devices on the market today that are technology driven um, earplugs that will say my job is to run a jackhammer all day, and that's highly noisy. So they have earplugs on the market now that when an employee is overexposed, it'll notify the supervisor in a text or an email and notify the employee that they have actually been overexposed. And all these are little noise devices that go inside the ear. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of neat stuff on the market. And depending on your job and how noisy it is, some of that could come into play. But you definitely got in, this is an annual requirement. And I think that depending on how noisy and how hard it is, it doesn't have to be an in-depth thing. But um, Anthony, anything you want to add on that?
Y- Yeah, only thing I would add on that is when you're doing your training, and sometimes you might want to use quizzes or actually personal protective equipment demos to make the training stick, and do your best to tailor the content to the job role.
Absolutely. The kind of earplugs you use, the kind of earmuffs you use, um, that definitely goes into play. You want to customize the training to the hazards that you're basically facing. All right. So engineering controls, this is the part I really like because this is where you can get creative. This is where we actually did a job once of a car crusher that basically was built near a neighborhood. And our job was to go out there, measure the noise levels in the neighborhood because they were high, and that helped design the wall height to prevent the noise because noise travels at a wave. And so what we were able to do is find out how these noise waves were traveling into the neighborhood and come up with engineering controls to see how high we could shield this wall to prevent the noise from going into the neighborhood. I guess all that says is that I like the creative side to figure out ways that we can reduce the noise level so you can pull people out of the hearing conservation program and make the job safer. Uh, Anthony, you want
Yes,
to talk a
yeah,
little bit about
yeah,
rotations and all those
yeah.
other?
So Don is right. That was a more of an engineering fix. And if you understand the hierarchy of controls, engineering engineering solution is higher than, hey, just using personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment is your last line of defense. So, and then there's some administrative controls. And that's when we talk about administrative controls, we're talking about job rotations and break schedule. Those things are administrative controls. And that will be, hey, that still be before personal protective equipment. And like I said before, the last line of defense is personal protective equipment. And that's where you have those hearing control protection. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And hearing protection. So, we want to make sure that, a lot of folks really don't know how to put in earplugs. I mean, there's a certain way to
Mhm.
do it. There's a certain with the foam ones, you roll them up, you put on your bottom of your earlobe and you
Mm.
let them actually expand in your ear. And that would also be part of the training. And so I've seen hearing protection with here's some crazy like in a hazmat situation where you're in a level A suit and you got to be able to communicate with other people. They make all kind of devices where you can actually have communication devices in your earplugs, but I see people try to put in earbuds for hearing protection. I actually
Right.
witnessed that yesterday at a site. I'm like, no, that is not hearing protection.
Mhm.
Uh, so, but anything else you want to add to this
Yeah,
slide,
well,
Anthony?
sure, sure. Like Don was mentioning, those hearing protection devices, they are those wearable accessories like earplugs and earmuffs that physically block sound waves from reaching the inner ear. That's where this happens at an inner ear. And all these hearing protection devices they are also given a noise reduction rating that represent the maximum number of decibels of noise they block. And there are many types of those hazard protection devices available with varying noise reduction ratings, you know, such as disposable earplugs. They range anywhere from 10 to 30 decibels. Those reusable earplugs are maybe 15 to 25 decibels. The ones I really like are those custom molded earplugs where you get them custom made to your fit. They have a higher reduction as, as 25 to 33 decibels. Of course, you see a lot of earmuffs and they may have a noise reduction rating of 20 to 30 decibels. Uh, and knowing these noise reduction ratings is helpful for determining which hearing protection devices are suitable for the different jobs, scenarios, and needs. But one of the things that OSHA definitely requires is once you reach that 85 decibel, you have to give the employees a choice. So for use, for comfort, and actually fit for them. So,
That's great, Anthony, because I think you just hit the nail on the head. Just going out and putting some earplugs on the wall and telling your employees to wear them without really understanding the noise levels and fitting the ear protection to the noise levels. I think a lot of people just assume by throwing a earplug dispenser on the wall they got it covered when they really may not. All right, the next evaluating your program. So as we like to do with all our programs, we want to make sure it's effective. So I highly recommend that you go in and make sure that people are wearing their hearing protection, that they are receiving training, that they are, getting their baseline hearing tests and annual hearing tests and communicating back to the employees and going out and auditing to make sure that the noise levels are changed. Because what happens is if you bring in new equipment and you bring in other processes, or you move someone from a department like a warehouse that may not be noisy to the production facility, that's a whole change. So, uh, Anthony, why don't you talk a little bit about when noise reassessing is required in facilities?
um,
Like
you mean
like you bring in a new process. Maybe you were under the permissible exposure level, and now you bring in two new machines or things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So anytime when you have noise levels, if there's a change in the process, change in the equipment, you may need to reassess uh, the workplace for noise exposures. And 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 you could very well reduce your noise exposures with the right type of equipment. So, mhm.
Anything out on the? I guess we covered standard threshold shifts in managing that. So that, but what you really want to do is show OSHA that you're looking at these things, that you're evaluating, that you're following the elements that's listed in your hearing conservation program, because that's one of the first things OSHA is going to ask for is the hearing conservation program. They're going to kind of read through it, and then they're going to go out and check to make sure that the all the elements that are listed are happening. So it's a good idea to show that you're reviewing all your procedures.
Yes.
We talked about that. Comment pitfalls. Incomplete records. What I've seen out there a lot is Depending on who's managing these records, they get lost in file cabinets or people, nowadays I think things are a little bit more electronic, but um, who's managing these records, who's keeping these records? Remember, if there's exposures, you may need to keep them for 30 years. Who has that? Where's that backed up? And um, delay in audiometric testing, we've seen that happen quite a bit because the van can't make it, or it's just hard to basically schedule the worker and meet production demands because production, it's hard to pull people off the floor to go get a hearing test. So those are some of the pitfalls that I've seen. Anthony, do you have any others that you'd like to throw in there?
Yeah, some of the most frequent, most common OSHA citations for noise is the failing to conduct the actual assessments, for actually doing a noise assessment, also for not providing hearing protection and implementing engineering controls. Uh,
I've seen a lot of that out there too, and also training. I mean, it's an annual training requirement, and a lot of people just, I don't
mm,
think they know that it's annual.
yeah, definitely.
All right. So case studies, you know, um, this is something that a lot of times implementing job rotations. It's you got employees that can be exposed to 3 or 4 hours, and then you're rotating jobs. I mean, I've seen that as a strategy out there, but understanding your employees' exposures is very important. Anthony, anything on this case study?
You know, case studies, of course, in particular, this one, they was looking at employer had over 500 employees and they were able to reduce their standard threshold shift rate by 60%. So this is an employer who did not understand the hazards of noise or did not put in uh, any noise reduction measures in place. So after OSHA issued these violations, because they had a number of standard threshold shifts and on their logs, well, they upgraded their PPE, they implemented some shift rotations and enhanced their training, and they were able to reduce their standard threshold shift rate.
It's great. Just basically shows safety in action. I mean,
Right.
understanding all the elements you need to meet, and then basically enforcing it and providing the right amount of oversight. This is a great case study to show how you can reduce these rates.
Hmm.
Resources. So again, the OSHA standard 1910.95. If your job is to govern over the hearing conservation program and all the required elements, it's a must-read standard. NIOSH has a ton of great tools on the market. How long someone could be exposed to this level where you got to rotate them out, and they have a ton of great information on the health effects of overexposure to hearing. And Anthony, what other tools? I know that you've had more your hands around a lot of those kind of things.
Actually, Don, this is a good list right here. If you go to any of those CDC, NIOSH here conservation tools, they have some great tools to use for helping you with your hearing conservation program. Some of the best I've seen. So,
I even have an app on my phone where that's not going to be something that OSHA basically you need to do noise sampling of your employees, but I have an app on my phone, so when I go out there, I'm like, okay, this app. I'm not saying it's completely accurate and calibrated, but it's probably given me
mm,
very close. So I use the app and I walk around the site and I'm like, okay, this area is very close. We need to conduct some sampling here. So there's amazing tools on the market to help make this easier. Um, any other questions before Anthony? Anything else you want to add before we end this
oh no,
presentation?
that was a comment. That's a comment. So it's like Diane. There was one comment and one question. So it was the that was a great comment there by Diane. Hey, you don't really rely on the noise reduction rating that's on the box. You got to use that that NOS rating calculation, which you take that noise reduction rating and subtract the 7 and divide that by 2. And she brings up a great point that most employees do not wear them properly. So
That's
uh,
a great point. Yeah, absolutely. We see it. They're hanging out of the ear. They're not. Yeah, we see a lot. You know, see that out in the field.
and
Um,
then on that one, the case study that we were talking about with the over 500 plus employees, and I can't recall exactly the exact number, but it was more than two. It was somewhere in the low teens that they had the number of workers that were uh had to stand the threshold shift. So,
well, we thank you for attending our presentation today. And if you have any questions, please you can email either both Anthony and I. We will send out a copy of this presentation to everybody that attended, and we thank you for your support over the years. It's been a great ride.
Don, we did have another question come in.
Okay, what's the other
How do you
question?
control loss that happens outside of work? Motocross, gun use, concert goers.
You know what? I'm so glad that question came up because, to be honest, that's actually how I got hearing loss.
mhm.
I was kind of like one of those not very bright young people that played their music too loud, and I think I'm not the only one out there that has done that. So, you know, Anthony, what have you seen strategy wise? Because I think that's a great question. I'm glad it was brought up because shooting guns to playing loud music to all the other things that contribute to. So, how best can a company mitigate those things?
Well, a lot of that can be you try to deal with some of those personal activities you, in the training program. You don't necessarily know what any of your employees may be doing outside of that, but you can discuss that and talk about what their personal activities, how that can also affect their hearing loss. So that's the one way that most people handle it. And then also, when they're doing these audiometric testing, you're asking those questions, do you do this? Do you do certain types of activities? And that may the licensed healthcare professional may take that into consideration and see if the hearing loss is actually from work related or it could be from somewhere else. So
Yeah, that's great. And that's another good reason why I highly recommend that everybody, where it makes sense, to conduct this kind of hearing testing, you know, because what can happen in the workplace, because an employee can come back and claim hearing loss, and you're not even required to have a hearing conservation program, but it documents in your file what your actual noise levels are. Because I do think that there probably is a number, I don't know the statistics of people that I know that are out there getting their hearing loss from their personal activities, but they're getting claimed on company records. So that's a great question. Any other questions, George? I don't see the I don't see the question box.
No, sir. Looks like you got them all.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your time today. Again, if you got any questions, please reach out to me or Anthony, and we look forward to presenting again in a few more months on our next topic.